So now that I covered Lil Xan, I feel like it makes sense to cover the rapper most adjacent to him, and that would be Lil Skies. Seeing as how they both blew up around the same time, they both got fame extremely fast without much time in the underground, and they both ended up in somewhat the same spot. I mean, there's no doubt that Lil Skies is a much more talented singer than Lil Xan, and he's a very good rapper as well, which a lot of people don't seem to realize. Overall, he's a very well-rounded artist, and I feel like he should have went a lot farther than he ended up going. To me, Little Skies was always like the better trippy red, and I feel like he should have got to that level of fame, but for one reason or another, he never seemed to hit that. He definitely had a moment, he got Billboard hits, he got best-selling records, but soon after that, he ended up kind of falling off. But even that's not the case. Even though people seem to be pushing that online and saying that he completely fell off, he still pushes about a million views on almost everything he drops. So once again, can you really call that a fall off? I mean, most YouTubers can't hit that, most big time streamers can't hit that. So 1 million is 1 million no matter what. And when most people look into Lil Skies, they bring up the same points that basically he stopped making music for a little bit and fell off because of that. But if you really look into it, he never really stopped dropping music. He's still dropping music videos to this day. So what's the actual reason that he fell off? Well, let's find that out when we look into the story of Little Skies. Demetrius Christopher Foes was born August 4th, 1998 in Waynesboro, Pennsylvania, in a pretty small isolated town with not much to do, at least during the time that Skies was growing up in the early 2000s. I hear nowadays it's a little bit more developed. Just before everybody in the comments says, I actually grew up there too, and it's actually a really bustling metropolis. At the time, he said that it wasn't very developed, so if you're mad at anybody, get mad at Little Skies. Anyways, let's move on. During his childhood, he was a lot like other kids. He would watch cartoons, he'd play video games, but more than anything, he'd rap, starting at the age of 3. And this is all because his father was incredibly persistent on him becoming a rapper, telling him early on that if he was going to do anything, he'd have to do it right. So he made sure that his son was in the studio as young as 4 years old, giving him the name Little Skies because his name was Dark Skies. Early on in Little Skies' career, he would describe this as being a positive thing, with his father really showing an interest in his own hobbies, but once he got older, he realized that it was actually his father's hobby, and he heavily enforced that upon Skies, basically forcing him to become a rapper. He would describe in an interview in 2024 that the only time he could really get his father's attention is when he was making music, and that was the only way they connected, with him mostly being raised by his stepfather, who at the time during his childhood he didn't really appreciate, but as he got older, he realized that his stepfather put a lot more effort into him than his actual father, with him trying to seek validation from him during his entire life, and it seems at this point he's very burnt out by that. But Skies kind of flip-flops on this point from time to time, sometimes saying it was a positive thing, sometimes saying it was a negative thing, so it seems like he's still very confused by it. But either way, this would take rap from being a simple hobby for him to an absolute obsession, with him sitting inside watching the Jay-Z documentary, listening to rappers like Funk Volume, Wiz Khalifa, which is actually the person who inspired him to start smoking weed, and Eminem, who he was heavily inspired by in his early career, making that more lyrical, spiritual rap. But it went from something that he would do at home to something that he would actually do in school too. Every time he did a project, it would be rap related. Every time he had to write an essay, he'd write down lyrics. And surprisingly, this actually helped him in school because him writing lyrics so often would also help him write essays that would eventually get him good grades. And unlike a lot of other rappers in the SoundCloud era, he actually did well in school, graduated on time, and even went to college. And it was in one of those college dorm rooms that he would eventually make the songs that would blow him up. But before we talk about that, we have to go back all the way to 2009 when he first started dropping music. His first two projects are called the Freestyles 1 and 2, which is pretty self-explanatory. It was basically a bunch of freestyles all compiled together, but at this point, it's basically lost. All we really have is the track list and the cover art, and the music itself has never resurfaced online, most likely due to the fact that it was never posted online in the first place. It was put out in 2009, meaning it was probably printed on a CD or cassette tape or whatever you want to say, and at this point, we can't listen to it, so we have to move on to his next project. Soon after that, we get another project called Good Grades, Bad Habits, which unfortunately is also lost. It was actually posted on SoundCloud sometime during 2015, but was then later taken down, most likely due to the fact that Lil Skies didn't really like it. And seeing as how this was so early on in his career and nobody was really paying attention to him at the time, nobody took the effort to actually download the project, meaning it's also lost. So the first project by Lil Skies we can actually listen to is called Good Grades, Bad Habits number 2. And this project actually included a song called The Sauce, which ended up being Lil Skies' first real breakthrough hit. I'm not really sure how many plays it had at the time, but right now it sits at over 6 million plays on SoundCloud. And as soon as it started picking up buzz on there, it would then get a music video posted on YouTube that now sits at over 8 million views. So you can tell that the Lil Skies come up was definitely imminent, and it seems that he thought that himself because he actually ended up tattooing his face at the age of 16 before he was even famous. He said before he did this to basically sacrifice his face to the rap game, meaning that he couldn't get a real job job and that he'd have to be 100% dedicated to his craft, which is kind of stupid, but it definitely came off as pretty hard to his fan base at the time. After that track, he would drop another one called Honestly, followed up by Heartbreaker, which both did numbers, with him then dropping another track called No Bad Vibes, which now sits at over 6 million plays as well, meaning that he was getting hits back to back. He also continued to drop music videos on YouTube as well, including tracks like Kingful, Tokyo, and Someway, which all did numbers and led up to his first official show, which he actually recorded and archived on his YouTube channel as well. With all this momentum, he would then drop a mixtape called Alone, which was pretty successful in an underground sense, but it wasn't until he got into college and started making music in his dorm room that he was able to create the two hits that would break him through into the mainstream, the first being Lust, and the second, of course, being Red Roses. But before he ended up dropping those tracks, he would discover a YouTube channel known as Cuff Boys, which heavily featured another artist known as Landon Q. And it turns out he was actually a pretty big fan of Lil Skies, often listening to his music within the vlogs, and that would eventually lead Skies to reach out to him and then become part of them as well. And if you're wondering how Landon Q met the guy from Cuff Boys, they actually went to middle school together, and once Lil Skies got introduced to the vlogs, they got even more popular. It was basically a symbiotic relationship where they would play their music in the vlogs and get more attention on their music, but them being pretty poppin' rappers would also get the vlogs more attention, so it was mutually beneficial. In April of 2017, Skies would drop the audio for Red Roses on SoundCloud, which would go on to gain 1 million plays in the following months, before he then appeared on No Jumper in September of that year alongside Landon Cube and of course Cameron as well. And within this interview, we would find out that Lil Skies was actually very bothered by the hate that he was getting online, with him talking about how he wanted to respond to every single hate comment, and Adam22 telling him that if he got bigger, he wouldn't be able to do that and it was a bad idea. Honestly though, the first time listening to this podcast, you'd probably only look at that as a throwaway line. I feel like a lot of young artists definitely get bothered by hate, but the farther and farther you go into Sky's career, the more you realize just how much that hate really does get to him. After the No Jumper podcast, he would then drop 3 big hits called Atomic Bomb, Signs of Jealousy, and of course Lust, which a lot of people would put in Fortnite compilations, which of course really helped the song out and got it pushed even farther online, while at the same time making it seem like Lil Skies had kind of a younger fan base. At least that's what it seemed like to me when I was in high school at the time, but overall it really doesn't affect anything. Because only a month later, he would drop the massive video for Red Roses on the Lyrical Lemonade channel, and just like that, he was an overnight success. He was in the mainstream, he was blowing up everywhere, and everybody wanted to be around him, just like Lil Xan with Betrayed. And it's most likely because of Betrayed that Red Roses got so much attention online. I mean, it would have been popular no matter what, but after the channel got 100 million views on that video, anything that dropped afterwards would undoubtedly become a hit. And the track was actually so popular that it would debut on the Billboard Hot 100 at number 69. Keep in mind that X, Ski Mask, Smoke Perp never really got a big hit on the Billboard until much later in their career, so Lil Skies was definitely ahead of the curve. And of course, with the song going so crazy, he was scouted out by a couple record labels, eventually picking Atlantic Records and signing a deal with them only a couple months into his career. He would also begin to put the finishing touches on his debut mixtape, Life of a Dark Rose, with him previewing a couple of the tracks on his Instagram story, with one track in particular called Welcome to the Rodeo actually going viral online, with everybody checking out the snippet and getting excited for the actual track to drop. But before that track came out, he would actually team up with Lyrical Lemonade once again to drop a video for his track Nowadays. Originally, it was actually supposed to be another track off the album called Big Money. That's what the label wanted, but apparently Cole Bennett felt so strongly about Nowadays and wanted Landon Cube to get his shine as well, so he told the label to completely scrap the budget, with him paying out of pocket for Nowadays to come out in the way that he wanted. And that was definitely a good move on his part, because the track became even more popular than Red Roses, actually debuting on the Billboard Hot 100 at number 55, and of course the video was very successful as well. After that, he would appear on Pigeons and Planes, go on tour with Lil Uzi Vert, and then finally drop the mixtape to not very good first week sales. I mean, it only sold about 16K, which is actually less than Total Xanarchy, but considering it was his first mixtape, this wasn't too bad. But whether it sold well or not doesn't really matter, because either way, it's an absolute classic from the SoundCloud era, one of the best mixtapes to ever drop during that time. Some of the tracks on there I still listen to nowadays. I wish I could sit here and give you some deep cuts, but Welcome to the Rodeo is one of my favorite songs of all time, and that's on this mixtape, so I gotta give it to him. Skies was definitely in his prime during this period. Oh yeah, and the mixtape also ended up debuting at number 10 on the Billboard, so overall, not too bad. After that, in January of 2018, he would go back to No Jumper to get an exposed video on the channel, before then going back to Pigeons and Planes in February and doing another interview with them. After that, he would once again return to Lyrical Lemonade, dropping a video for Welcome to the Rodeo, which unfortunately didn't end up charting like the prior two songs, but it still did very good view-wise, and it didn't seem like his momentum was stopping anytime soon. In April April, we got the music video for Lust, which of course was already doing numbers online, but once it got a music video to go along with it, it would then debut on the Billboard Hot 100 at number 87. After that, he would go on tour for Life of a Dark Rose, before then collabing with another upcoming artist known as Young Pinch on the track I Know You, which of course ended up premiering at number 79 on the Billboard Hot 100. After that, he would then drop a track with Lil Xan called Lies, before then dropping a music video for a track called No Rest, which appears to be a sleeper hit for Skies and never charted or anything, but it now sits at 22 million views on YouTube and it's not a Lyrical Lemonade video, so that's pretty good. After that, he would finally get back from the Life of a Dark Rose tour, before then immediately heading on another tour in September called Dazed and Blazed, before he then dropped another video on Lyrical Lemonade for his track For Real featuring Wiz Khalifa, which ended up doing numbers as well as debuting on the Billboard Hot 100 at number 73, before he then finished off the year of 2018 by dropping one more track called Ops Want Me Dead. And that might have actually been true because in July, he actually was confronted by a man with a gun who tried to rob him for his chain. Skies luckily was able to get away from the altercation by slapping the man in the face and then running for his life, but it seems like a lot of people online said that they wanted Skies to be dead instead of X, which caused Lil Skies to hop on a live stream and call out all the fans that are wishing death upon him.
I just want to tell everybody I'm going ghost off the internet. I'm staying off this shit for a long ass time. I see on the video of academics sharing me, my story about me getting robbed, that people wish I died instead of X. Rest in peace, my brother X. Rest in peace, Jimmy Wapo. Rest in peace, my friend with cancer just died. Bro. Yo, I'm done with this internet shit. Y'all can have it. I see on the video me talking about my story getting robbed, people commenting they should have killed Lil Skies instead of X. They should have did this and all that. Bro, rest in peace my nigga X, but y'all motherfuckers are fucked up, bro. I never wish death on anybody. That's insane. I'm off this shit. I want no clout. I never asked for no clout. I never asked for shit, bro. Niggas will not disrespect me. Niggas, y'all, people want me dead? Bro, I'm making music, doing what I love, and y'all want me dead? Y'all want to see me dead? Bet, bro. Say no more.
And I definitely do understand why he was upset about that. I mean, that's pretty gnarly, but at the same time, it's a bad idea to give attention to people like this online. As soon as you react to them once, they're going to want you to react to them over and over and over again, and they're going to keep leaving more nasty comments in hopes of getting your attention. Ignoring them is definitely the better idea because eventually they will fade away if they realize that they're not getting your attention and you're not reacting to what they're doing, where if you do react to them, then the silent majority of fans who really do care about what you're doing are going to be like, man, why is this guy so negative? I'm leaving a bunch of comments saying nice things about him, but he only reacts to the people saying negative stuff about him. What's up with that? And eventually it wears away at your fan base. But anyways, besides that one little freakout in June, he had a very uneventful year when it came to online antics because unlike a lot of other artists in the SoundCloud wave who had to do dumb things to get people to pay attention to him, Lil Skies was actually building a fan base off of his music alone. And even better than that, Lil Skies was mostly drug-free during the entire time that he was blowing up. He did smoke a lot of weed, but he never partook in anything harder than that, meaning that he would never get lazy and stop dropping music or not be able to perform because he was too high. Because of all that, it seemed like Lil Skies was in a very good place in his career, with him starting off 2019 by dropping 2 music videos for tracks called Real Ties as well as Name in the Sand, before he then dropped his debut album in March of 2019 called Shelby, which ended up doing very well, selling 54,000 first week as well as debuting on the Billboard Hot 100 at number 5. There was also a track off this album called I, which ended up debuting at number 39 on the Billboard Hot 100, becoming his biggest hit to date, although it would be the last time that he would appear on Billboard during the rest of his career. And this is when a lot of people online would say that he started to fall off, although I don't really agree. A lot of people like to say that the gap between Life of a Dark Rose and Shelby really hurt his momentum, but you can clearly see that even though there was a gap between albums, he never stopped dropping singles, doing music videos, going on tour, so he definitely was keeping his buzz going very well. Although around the same time his first son would be born, meaning that he had less time to dedicate towards music and a lot more responsibility when it came to being a father. And a lot of people also like to point out him having a kid as being the reason that he fell off, but at the same time, he never really stopped dropping music, because soon after this, he would appear on Lyrical Lemonade again, alongside Lil Nar and Craig Zen on the track Death Note, before then getting a feature from Lil Durk on the track Having My Way, which now sits at 40 million views on YouTube alone, which definitely isn't fall-off numbers if you ask me. After that, we get 2 more music videos for a track called Riot and another one called Fidget, which both now sit at 16 million views on YouTube, and he wasn't really advertising them that much either, meaning that his fan base was very strong. Basically, every time that he would drop a music video without even advertising it on Instagram, his fans would pull up and give it millions of views, which put him in a space where he felt like he didn't really have to advertise anything he did, which wasn't a good idea because even with a strong fan base of millions of people, if you're not advertising, you're not really getting any new fans, and eventually your fans are going to grow older as time goes on, and you're going to want those younger kids to still listen to the music. And this lack of a presence online would eventually come back to bite him in the ass when he dropped his next project called Unbothered, which only sold about 15K in its first week, which, if you remember, is even worse than Life of a Dark Rose. And this is where a lot of people really started to say that he fell off, although I feel like there's a couple different factors that led to this project doing so poorly. First of all, in 2021, nobody really wants to listen to an album anymore. That's why a lot of artists are forgoing even putting them out. With TikTok being so popular and people only having the attention span to listen to half of a song, putting out a full project usually means that people aren't going to listen all the way through, and that's why almost every album that comes out now sells worse than it did a couple years ago. And in 2020 to 2021, we started to see the effects of that with people like Meek Mill, Quando Rondo, Smoke Perp, and even Lil Uzi Vert dropping projects that started selling worse than their prior ones. And every time one of these projects ended up underperforming, DJ Academics would then post it up on his page showing everybody the poor sales numbers, even though he never advertised the project when it initially came out. And this leads to the second problem that really hurt this album, the fact that Lil Skies didn't actually advertise it whatsoever. I seen a lot of comments at the time on DJ Academics saying that I would have listened to the project if I knew it came out, meaning that actual fans of Lil Skies that would usually listen to his music wanted to listen to this project the first week it came out, but they weren't even aware of it because he didn't make any effort to actually try to get it out there and tell people that he dropped a new project. But on top of all of that, I'm sorry to say, but the album is pretty mid, I gotta say. It definitely doesn't compare to Life of a Dark Rose, and it doesn't even really compare to Shelby either. It feels like a bunch of throwaways that he put together on a project with no real standout single. And this unfortunately would start to become a pattern for Lil Skies, with his music sounding a lot more low effort than it did before. And this is most likely because he started dealing with a lot of issues in his personal life. First of all, apparently he was paying the rent for some of his family members, and that was leading him to spend a lot of money that he didn't really have. On top of that, he would start to have issues with his label, with them not letting him drop music as much as he wanted to. And at one point, it seems like he was actually going to be in debt to his label, because what a lot of people don't realize is when you get that big chunk of money when you first start making music, that $1 million advance, you actually have to make the label the money back. It's basically an advance because it means they give you the money in advance and then you have to pay it back, kind of like a loan. But luckily for Skies, after taking the label to court, he realized that he actually did make enough money to pay off his advance and he didn't owe them anything, meaning that he was able to cleanly break it off from them and become an independent artist, which he definitely seems pretty happy about. But at the same time, seeing as how he doesn't really advertise his music and now he doesn't have the label to push it whatsoever, it seems like it's only going to make things worse and worse for actual fans being able to find out when he drops. And with all these stressful factors combined, he would start drowning in his sorrows and drinking lean, which is something that he never did during the time that he was first blowing up, but nowadays he sips almost daily according to some people online. It's kind of hard to say if he does or not, because after all, he's not really online all that much, but it definitely seems like if you listen to the music nowadays, that might be the reason that it seems so low effort, because after all, you can't really make good music when you're doing drugs every day. But anyways, after Unbothered dropped, he would do a deluxe version not too long after that, which had 5 new songs, although that didn't really help push the project anymore, and once again it was a flop. Soon after that, he would go to Rolling Loud and have a bit of a freak out at the audience there. Apparently they weren't really vibing to his music, they weren't jumping, they weren't moving, they were just sitting there stagnant, which led him to yell at the audience and tell them that they weren't too cool to jump up and down and actually enjoy the music.
You just come here and stand like this. Y'all look weird as shit. Turn the fuck up. You are not too cool to jump. Turn the fuck up. Fuck. Fuck all that weak shit, nigga.
And after he yelled at the whole audience, they actually ended up turning out for him, but that didn't really matter to the internet because all they saw was the clip of him freaking out, which of course only added to the narrative of him being a flop with an album that didn't sell that well and an audience that didn't really want to turn up to his music. And of course, we just went through the whole Smoke Perp, Florida Jit stuff, so people were already laughing at SoundCloud rappers falling off, even though it was completely unwarranted when it came to Lil Skies, because even though his album didn't sell that well, he was still pushing millions of views on YouTube, and he's not a fall off by any means. But like I said before, Lil Skies is not somebody who can ignore all the hate about him online, so this level of hate definitely caused him to push himself a little bit farther away from his audience and his online presence, which is really the exact opposite of what he should be doing. He shouldn't be pulling farther and farther back away from his fans. He should try his best to try to make new fans, which he kind of did when he dropped his next single on Lyrical Lemonade alongside Snot called Whipski. That definitely got the younger generation to pay attention to him once again because he was alongside a newer artist. And after that, we'd really only start to see him for the antics that he would pull online Lime. First of all, he got a really weird face tattoo that would start a beef with Sos Mula. If you want to check out my video on that, you can. He would drop another track with Landing Cube called Play This at My Funeral, which really made a lot of fans happy to see the two of them back together after so many years, but at the same time, they felt like the energy was a little bit low and it seemed like Skies really wasn't trying that hard. So even when he did something that his fans actually enjoyed, they would still hate on him and say that he had to go back to that 2018 style, which is something that Lil Uzi Vert has also struggled with a lot. Every time he tries something new, the fans don't like it, and then every time he goes back to that 2016 style, they also don't like it because he's not trying anything new. So to a lot of artists, this criticism really isn't helpful because it doesn't really mean a lot. It's just people wanting him to go back to the old days and make music like he used to in 2018. But for Skies, I do feel like it's actually justifiable. The music isn't bad because it's different or he's trying something new. It's bad because it seems a lot more low effort than the stuff that he was putting out in 2018. Lil Skies and Lil Xan are kind of similar to me in one way, where in their early career they put out a lot of high energy, very positive music, but once they started getting into drugs, you can tell that the energy really started to bottom out, and after that, there wasn't a whole lot of reason to go back to it. And unfortunately, you can see that Skies is starting to get himself in trouble with his drug use because he actually ended up getting arrested at a festival after doing a hit and run. Not to mention this interview that he did only a month ago, where you can tell that he's very low energy. He seems very depressed, very angry at his fans, and very angry at the world. And he's even telling his fans that it's nobody's business if he's doing drugs or not, which is very similar to Famous Dex right before he had to go to rehab. But don't get me wrong, I'm not making this video to hate on him. I'm actually a pretty big fan of Lil Skies. I enjoyed a lot of his music back in 2018, and even some of the stuff that he was putting out in 2020 was pretty good. But he just seems like he's going into a very dark place in his life where the hate is starting to consume everything that he does. And seeing as how he's only 25 years old, that makes a lot of sense. He's still very young, and it's got to be hard to go through the industry at such a young age. Music was always his full-time hobby, the one thing that he really loved in life, but eventually it became a job, and I guess that probably took a lot of the fun away from it. Not to mention people constantly talking about how he fell off is probably getting to him as well. So all I really want to say is that we should pray for Lil Skies. He's an extremely talented artist that makes music that really appeals to a large audience, and I feel like there's no reason he shouldn't be on the same level as Trippie Redd or Lil Uzi Vert. There's no way that he should be falling off like Smoke Perp or Xan or anyone like that. I think we all know that he has it in him to have a big time comeback if he only starts putting a little bit more effort into his music and really getting back into that positive mindset. But if right now he feels like he can't do that because there's too much negativity going on in his life, I also understand that. But time away from the spotlight is never a good idea as an artist. You always got to be pushing yourself in people's faces, keeping yourself relevant, dropping new music. And I know that probably gets exhausting for him, but at the same time, that's what he's got to do if he really wants that comeback. And I mean, everybody online wants to study the fall off of Lil Skies, but hopefully someday we can study the comeback of Lil Skies back into prominence, getting back on the billboard and making that music that his fans really appreciate. And if he's never able to get back to that point again, well, it's okay because he gave us a lot of timeless music that people will listen to until the end of time. And overall, I just hope the guy's healthy, staying out of trouble. We won't see him getting arrested time and time again because we all know drug use only leads to one of two places, and that's either prison or unfortunately passing away. Now, with all that said, that's basically the story of Lil Skies. Let me know what you think. Do you think he has the potential to make a comeback? Do you think he ever fell off in the first place? And what would it take for you to become a fan of Lil Skies once again? Let me know all that in the comments below. Shout out Knife Gang, shout out Spoon Gang, shout out Fork Gang, shout out Water Bottle Gang, and shout out everybody else as well. Subscribe to the channel. I'm trying to get to 20K. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to see more cool stuff like this, then check out my second channel. I do interviews with rappers there. I think the Lil Xan interview should be out by the time that this video drops. But besides that, once again, thanks for watching. See you in the next one. Bye.